Derby County manager completed his press conference ahead of the Preston North End game on Wednesday evening, and there's some really important talking points to talk about. The likes of team building, Sondre Langas, and a little bit of an injury update, as well as discussions around youngster Jake Rooney, but we're going to get into all of that in this video. Now obviously Derby County have come off the back of 3 wins in 3, heading into a game with Preston North End after the international break. I believe by the time Derby kick off on Wednesday afternoon, it will have been 17 days since Derby County last kicked a ball in anger, so it's going to be interesting to see how John Eustace sets up. Now, starting off with John Eustace's press conference, there was a team building trip to Manchester where they spent a few days up there, and they spent a lot of time on a training field, 2 days to be exact, as well as a couple of days off for the players to build their closeness and get to know each other a little bit more, as well as learning to understand the new coaches and management setup. Now obviously it's not necessarily needed, according to John Eustace, to build that closeness within the group, but it's always nice to do these things and get to know each other a little bit better. He went on then to speak about Jake Rooney and potential opportunities which could come his way. John Eustace expressed his delight and how impressed he's been with Jake Rooney since his arrival at Derby County, and said that should the opportunity arise and if Jake Rooney is needed, he will get an opportunity in the first team. Now obviously just a couple of weeks ago Derby County played up against Plymouth and he was really close to getting an opportunity that day, but just felt as if Sondre Langas was the right option for that moment. Now obviously Jake Rooney will be looking for first team football. He's had little snippets of it over the course of the last 2 or 3 seasons, but obviously this season has not quite gone to plan. We're obviously picking up his knee injury last season, which kept him out until pre-season, and then obviously picking up another knee injury, keeping him out until around October time, where he's been fit and has played for the 21s, but not yet for the first team. Now, he then goes on to talk about the players returning from international duty, the likes of Ibu Adams, the likes of Sondre Langas, Nathaniel Mendez-Lang, and players along those lines. He says they've all returned back fit and well, which is obviously really good for Derby County. The last couple of international breaks we've had have seen Derby County sort of lose players. You go back to Wanda Chiwa picking up a knock. I think Mendez-Lang picked up a knock in one. So it's not really been great for Derby County when these international breaks have happened. But it appears that all players have returned fit and well and ready to get on with the game on Wednesday night. I think it has helped for Derby County having that extra, say, 3 days compared to other teams, because you think some teams didn't play their final international game till Wednesday last week. I think one team played on Thursday, I could be wrong. But ultimately that means that if it was Mendez-Lang, for example, he wouldn't then be able to train until the Friday. If he was played on the Saturday, there's no chance he'd be involved, or no chance he'd really be able to be fit enough to play. So it's one of those for me where I'm glad that we've had the extra few days, although I wish we had have played on the weekend just so we were sort of more in tune with everybody else. But now we know what we're doing. One of those players who returned back from international duty was Sondre Langas. Now, he's had a conversation with John Eustace over the course of the last few weeks about an injury which he sustained a few weeks ago. Now, it was reported by John Eustace after, I think it was the Blackburn Rovers game, it might have been the Coventry City game, that he potentially required surgery and he could be out until the end of the season. But Sondre Langas and John Eustace have had a quite frank and honest conversation, and Sondre Langas is happy to play through the playing barrier and not get surgery right now. Now, John Eustace did go on to express that he wouldn't have forced Sondre Langas not to get surgery. He wouldn't have even asked him that question. But Sondre Langas put his cards on the table and was happy to play through the pain barrier, happy not to have surgery, which I do believe will mean that Sondre Langas will have surgery the day after the season ends, so long as the injury does not flare up again. Now, obviously, for Sondre Langas, that shows an immense amount of willing and love for Derby County and the willing to do whatever it takes. And we've seen this in the past with Martin Waghorn after he knocked himself out in that Sheffield Wednesday game. Curtis Davis coming back in that game, signing waivers so that if something happened he couldn't claim the club's insurance and things like that, or sue the club. So I think it's really important to have players like that in the building. I'm not saying it's always the right decision, but I do certainly believe that you can't necessarily, if a player wants to do that and they're happy to, you have to give them the choice. And I do believe that John Eustace and Keith Downing, Matt Gardner will all be assessing Sondre Langas in training. Is he limping? Is he wincing in pain? How's he getting through it? And if he's getting through it okay, I'm sure that they'll give him opportunities to play as the season draws to a close. But ultimately, you have to be very, very careful with these injuries. Now, talking about injuries, there is a couple of big injury updates with Nathaniel Mendez-Lang and Ryan Niambi back fit and available, both involved in training. We're going to have a bigger video talking about all the injury list later on today. So if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell, hit the like button as well to push this video to new audiences, and stay tuned for that video later today. Now, John Eustace was asked a question by Dom Dietrich about the importance of picking up a victory on Wednesday and how it could take Derby outside of the relegation zone. And I think the way that John Eustace batted back to this question was incredible, and I'm really impressed with how he responded. He said that he has a keen focus on each game in an individual sense, and it's more important to look at the games individually than looking at the league table and looking at what games are potentially coming up. And the keen focus has to be on just picking up points and not necessarily who we're coming up against. Essentially, pick up points and keep it moving. Pick up points and keep on moving. And that's what we've done in the last 3 games. We beat Blackburn when we didn't expect to. We beat Coventry when we didn't expect to. We beat Plymouth in a game where realistically in that second half, you could probably argue that Plymouth were probably in the ascendancy for most of that second half. And it's one of those for me where I really like John Eustace's outlook on the situation we're in. There's obviously 8 games left to play, 24 points left to play for, and 3 of them are available on Wednesday night. And if we were to take 3 points, we do obviously get out of the relegation places. And if we were to win by 2 clear goals, we'd then end up, I believe it's in 20th place in the Championship table. Now, for me, I really appreciate what John Eustace has done so far, and this approach that he's got of keeping it moving, picking up points, keeping it moving, picking up points, keeping it moving has been tremendous. Now, obviously it didn't start off too great, 4 losses, but since then he's really turned it around. Obviously 3 wins in 3. We've started to score goals again. I think it's 7. Is it 7 in the last 3 games, which is obviously massively important. But we've also limited the amount of goals we've been conceding. We've been scoring first as well, which I've said for a while is massively important. I'd rather Derby County come out the blocks and score 2 in half an hour and have to defend a 2-goal lead than score 1 in the 70th minute and then spend the next 15-20 minutes defending a 1-goal lead towards the end. And that's something which I think John Eustace has put immense focus on. It's getting that first goal, trying to get it as early as possible, because I think if you look through the games we've played recently, Blackburn, Coventry, obviously Plymouth as well, we've scored quite early in those games, I believe. I think Blackburn, a minute or so in, you go to Coventry, it's not quite as early, but it's certainly an early goal. I'm just going to get up the goal times now so that we can see. At Blackburn, we was 2-0 up in 7 minutes. Versus Coventry, we scored our first goal. I believe it was just before about the 25th minute. I think it was Matt Clark about 20-25 minutes in, and then obviously Marcus Harness scored straight outside of the half-time break. And then at Plymouth Argyle, we were 1-0 up within 11 minutes, 2-0 up in 26. So it's one of those where we need to get those goals in early, and that's what we've been decent at over the course of the last 3 or 4 games, and we've got to implement that again on Wednesday night. Now, an important point which Dom Dietrich made was that John Eustace has not lost a game this season when taking the lead, scoring the first goal in a sense, and that is across both Blackburn and Derby County. And I do think that's important, and I think that's important for the Championship. If you can score the first goal, a lot of these players, for most teams in this division, are capable of defending against anybody in this division. So that is the really important thing. If Derby County are to take the lead on Wednesday, I can't see us losing. But if we don't take the lead, it's a really difficult route back. And obviously we saw Derby County have a little bit of a comeback type victory versus Plymouth Argyle. Obviously not quite the same, because it was only Plymouth came back to 2-2, but Derby County then put it in to score that 3rd goal. And what a massive, massive victory that was. And as we head into Preston North End, what is going to happen? What are your predictions? Let me know down in the comments. If you have not done so already, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and I'll catch you in my next video.